Day 92, River Notes, Part 1. River systems. Flowing water in streams and rivers is the dominant erosional process shaping Earth's landscape. Streams and rivers erode, transport sediments, change course, and flood their banks in natural recurring patterns. And we're going to be looking at each one of these topics throughout the notes today and tomorrow. What is a river system? A river system is made up of the main stream, tributaries, which are small feeder streams that feed into the main stream. The watershed is the land that drains into the main stream and its tributaries. And divides. These are the areas of high elevation that separate river systems. So let's practice. The main stream, I would like you to write that phrase, mainstream, along this line here at the middle, representing the river. Tributaries, we have two of them shown here. There's one there, and there's one over here hiding behind the hill that would lead down. So please label this area tributary, and this area right here, tributary. Divide is this ridge line along the top. This line right here is a divide, and on the other side, the tops of these hills right here. So any rain that falls into this area or falls over here will eventually flow down into the river and its tributaries. That's what the divides are. This whole area is called the watershed. So watershed is all of the green here. The divide is the boundary line here at the top of these hills and the top ridge of these hills. Tributary is down here, another tributary over there, and the main stream. What causes a river system to form? Precipitation occurs faster than evaporation, and that will cause a river. Gravity pulls water and rocks down the slope from the highest elevation to the lowest elevation. Running water erodes away channels, and the river forms. Parts of a river. The head is where the river starts, the highest elevation. Oftentimes, there is a spring in that location. The mouth. This is where the river ends, the lowest elevation. That's going to be in a lake or an ocean or a sea. Channel. That is the stream's path. The bank. Those are the edges of the channel that are above water. The bed. The bed is the bottom of the channel that is usually underwater. Okay, so here we have another diagram. Let's label that. The head is right up here, the beginning of the river. Label this spot the head. The mouth is down here. So off to the side here, on the left side, please put mouth. Channel is this whole path here. So go ahead along this side here, once you go ahead and write channel. The bank are the two sides, the left and the right sides at the water's edge. So write down the word bank here and the word bank there. And then finally, the word bed. That's going to be the bottom of the river. Please write the word bed right underneath here. River erosion. There are four main factors that affect the rate of erosion. First of all, we have the load. The materials that are carried by the river, that's called the load. They're dissolved minerals, suspended sediments, or rocks along the bottom of the channel. The discharge is the amount of water moved by the stream. When the discharge is high, it carries a larger load and therefore causes more erosion. The gradient is the steepness of the river. We talked about the gradient last semester when we were looking at the slopes of hills on topographic maps. It's the exact same thing. So the gradient is the steepness of a river. The gradient is high or steepest at the head And it's the lowest gradient, or the flattest, at the mouth of the river. That's generally, of course, there are always exceptions. The higher the gradient, the faster the water is going to flow, and the faster the erosion is going to occur. Number 4, water speed. The faster the water speed, the more erosion. The slower the water speed, the more deposition. As water slows down, it can't carry as much as before, and so it's going to deposit sand and dirt and silt. On a curve of the river, the outside curve, where the water is moving faster, will be eroding. And the inside of the curve, that's where the water is going to be moving the slowest. It will be depositing sediments. So here we have a winding river, and on the outside here, that's where we're going to have more speed, has a longer distance around to go than on the inside of the curve. Since the water here has a bigger circle, a bigger curve to go around, it speeds up. Right here on the inside of the curve, it's a smaller circle, smaller curve, so the water doesn't have to go as fast to keep up. Rivers features caused by erosion. First of all, we have meanders. Meanders are a series of wide S-shaped curves along a river channel. Here we can see a very large gathering of meanders. We call that a meandering river. And meanders can eventually form an oxbow lake. It's a cut-off meander shaped like a U with the open side towards the river that formed it. And let's look at the steps that would happen in order for an oxbow lake to form. You have these 4 pictures. Here's number 1. I want you to write the word erode right here, because this is where the faster water on the outside of the curve is going to erode a lot into the dirt. And on this side here, also write erode. And down here, erode. And lastly, the word erode here. So we have 4 erosions, 4 erode labels, please, on the outside curves. The water is going to dig into the dirt there. And now we're going to have the word deposit on the inside curve right here. Put deposit in this section. And the word deposit up here. And the word deposit here. So we have 3 words deposit in this first picture. When we have the river doing those things, eroding and depositing in those locations, it's going to end up looking like this picture over here. Notice that we have a sandbar here. That's where the sand has been deposited, as we wrote in the previous picture. And this sandbar is also bigger than before, because sand has been depositing in that location, and same thing down there. And the river has now gotten closer to the edge of the box in this picture here. This distance is closer than this distance in the box. So the meander is growing. It's growing more bendy, and it's covering up a larger area of ground. Eventually, these 2 areas here are going to erode together. So write the word erode in this spot right there, in between those 2 river curves. Write erode. And that's box number 2. Going down to box number 3, we can see where that erosion has connected those 2 bends that were separated up here. So now we have a straight shot for the river. Now this is still flooded, and so some water is going to be flowing here, but the river doesn't really have much place to go, and so it doesn't flow very fast here. And so in this spot right here, the water really slows down as it goes from the river to this circle. It slows down in this area. And so when it slows down, it cannot carry as much deposits, as much sand and silt and dirt. So it's going to deposit sand and dirt right here. Write the word deposit in this location. Deposit right here. And so we can see in box number 4 what the result is of that deposit. We end up with a sandbar here, and it's going to grow grass, and grass is going to fall over and die and rot and turn to dirt, and other plants will grow here and die and turn to dirt. And so you end up with plain old ground here, and this area here stays a lake because the sand and dirt hasn't been deposited in those areas as much. So that's why we call it an oxbow lake. Here's another diagram. We're going to be having erosion in this location, and the river is going to be able to break through eventually and form the straight line. Here's some pictures of real oxbow lakes. Next, a floodplain. A floodplain is the large flat area next to the channel that is covered by water during a flood. Whenever this river floods, gets too much rain, and it raises over its banks, this very, very flat area is going to get flooded from one side all the way to the other. Gradually over time, the meanders grow and shrink and straighten out, and the river was going to flow back and forth across this. In some years, it's going to be way over here, and then as the years and centuries pass, it's going to move over to other places as erosion and deposition changes the course. River features caused by deposition include deltas. Here we have the ocean and a river flowing down, and when it hits the ocean, it slows down and deposits all this darker pink material, and that's a very flat area, and little tributaries will break off of this. Tributary is not the right word, but little branches of the river will break off, and some will flow over here, and some will flow down there, and some will float over here, and gradually the delta is going to grow larger and larger as more and more dirt is deposited. Dirt is deposited here because the river slows down as it enters a lake or an ocean, and when it slows down, it cannot receive or cannot carry as much dirt. Here's a picture of the Nile River. This is the Mediterranean Sea way up here, and this green area right here is the Nile Delta. It has lots of good dirt there, lots of good water, and so it's very lush. That's where most of the farming is in Egypt. The Ganges River Delta and the Mississippi River Delta. Here's the main Mississippi here, and then it branches off into all these little things, and they're all dumping dirt into the ocean, building up these peninsulas with a river running in the middle. A natural levee is a mound of coarse sediment along the river's bank that is left after a flood. And these mounds can build up over many, many floods and build to be quite the wall. And so the land far away from the river is below the level of these levees. And these help protect this little area from future floods a little bit. Not perfect, but it helps out. So here's a young river, flat banks, and as it floods, it deposits dirt on the edges, and it gradually gets higher and higher over the years. And that's the end of today's notes. We'll start river notes number 2 tomorrow.